having these teams that stay together is how you see the rivalry start. If the Nets come out this year and take it from the Bucks, then that year after that, we're going to have that much more of a heated rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you were kind of seeing in old school basketball, or, when we were growing up, you always seen the Pistons going up against the same teams. You always seen, I know when I first started watching basketball, the Pistons were going always against the Nets, always against the Pacers. Yeah. So I think in having those teams stay together and really duke it out for many years in a row is how you kind of get those heated rivalries.
Yeah.
And ultimately it could bubble over and into something that we have like with the Malice at the Palace. We had that happen here in not actually about a mile from where I'm sitting at right now in my office. That happened at the old Palace. So I know the documentary is coming out coming up Tuesday. Just about a recap of that. I know we talked about we wanted to see exactly our thoughts on it. Going on almost 20 years now. How do we think it impacted things? Where exactly you were, and you kind of kick it off to your thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's back November 2004. At the time, I was 11. So, was getting into sports, probably was more of a football fan. That's kind of a sport that I, grew up and enjoyed more. So, definitely more of a football fan. I think at the time, like, Pistons weren't really playing very well during this game. So, they actually ended up, like, cutting it off and just, like playing video games or something for a little bit of time. And then I got done playing video games and happened to just turn it back on. And I just saw them fighting. Didn't see how it transpired or anything, but just as like an 11-year-old, like I kind of was so taken back by like what I was watching. And I think back then, obviously when you're younger, you're like super invested in teams, probably more than, obviously everybody's like got their teams and, super fans or whatever you want to call them. Like they're at the highs of the highs, their team is doing great, but they're also the lows and lows, and the team isn't doing well. Just very, very passionate for their team. And I think the one thing that I kind of like laugh about was that I was so upset that players came off the bench because they barely even had enough players to play the Bobcats that following Sunday. And back then, the Bobcats was just an expansion team. Was just kind of like getting off the ground with things. And I do remember that Tayshaun kind of had to carry them. I'm pretty sure he played like 40 to 45 minutes that game, and ultimately had to carry them to that win that Sunday. But definitely was, for me, like I said, from like an 11-year-old perspective, I was just like, what is going on? And we weren't in the social media days back when you can like, you got a random fan has a video and this fan has a video. Like only coverage you really saw was either on the news or ESPN. So I think that even kind of, I'm so excited about this documentary myself because it's going to be like a lot more of that behind the scenes. We get to hear from Steven Jackson, Jermaine O'Neal, Ron Artest. Hopefully we get to hear from like, Ben Wallace and some players on the Pistons team, that are kind of like in the thick of things. So I think that's for me, like that's kind of like where I was with from my point of view. We'll kind of kick it to you and just kind of see where you're at during that game.
Sure. So I would say kind of the same ballpark as you. I was watching the Pistons probably 2 years before that is when I started. I would have been 12. So I was watching the Pistons around, 2002-ish season. And then I remember I was fully in golf by the time we won the championship. And this would have been coming off of that 04 championship where we beat the Lakers. So I would say I was already fully, drinking the Kool-Aid. I was sold. I was bought on the team. And I actually did not watch the game. But oddly enough, I did have a cousin who dropped his kids off at the house I was at to go to that game. So the first time I heard about it is when he returned and basically said, you didn't hear what happened. The game got, cut short in the middle of the game. There was a fight. Obviously you didn't have the name Malice at the Palace. Then that became kind of a media name that was given afterwards. But I would say this has probably had a larger impact on the NBA than we even imagined. I would say, we have watched the game change in the 20 years that we've been fans of the basketball. And if we were to talk to, people older than us, they would say that the game that we were watching when we first started wasn't as physical as what they seen. So I would say, but that date and time kind of directed how the league changed. That really happened because Ben Wallace and Ron Artest, I believe it was, or maybe it was Jermaine O'Neal. They basically shoved each other and got into it, and that was kind of commonplace up until that point. You could shove a person, you might get a T, you might not, you might get a flagrant. If now you can't touch a person, you can't no contact outside of a handshake after the game or before the game. So I think that's had a tremendous impact on the game that we are currently watching.
Yeah. They like coming off the bench, like
yes,
now you come off the bench, it's like an
automatic suspension.
So every time a fight's about to happen, you just see coaches and like they get in front of the bench and they just kind of put their arms out, making sure nobody like goes past them. And I just always think that's kind of crazy because I think that's what really kind of like escalated that whole situation in a sense, at least from the videos that all on YouTube that we've seen. Like guys just kind of started coming from their benches, and that's when things just really started to like get a little crazier than everybody obviously expected it to.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then when people, I think that's when the bench clearing rule became a thing where you can't involve yourself. You're not on court, you can't involve yourself in it. And I would say that was a major, outcome because of this fight, as well as how they allow fans to interact. It was pretty dirty. I mean, it was dirty to watch some of the fans, throwing beer and popcorn and going onto the court themselves. Those are the type of things that are inexcusable, regardless of how much you root for a team or anything like that. I mean, you being half buzzed in the stands, you're going to get knocked out cold against most professional athletes, most college athletes, probably most high school athletes. You're in the stands 3 or 4 beers deep and, kind of pudgy. You're going to get hit. So I would say that kind of just changed the lay of the land as far as how we even interact with the fan or with the teams, how the teams can kind of the level of passion and fire you can even have. You need to play much more level-headed now than then, because if that same thing were to happen in the league this coming up year, they probably would suspend every player for most of the season. A lot of those players, Ben Wallace could easily say he initiated or one of the people that was the reason why it popped off, and he was suspended 6 games.
Yep.
And then so I would say
30.
Yeah. And I think Ron Artest maybe even had to get reinstated. He was I think he might have been out of the league for a while, like the rest of that season or something. But
definitely his case, because he was already just kind of like a bad boy of the league.
He was known as a loose cannon. He was known, And then you got to think, I think it was Steven Jackson was just laying on the thing, chilling when he had the beer thrown on him.
That was Artest. That was
Artest. Okay, that was Artest. Yeah. So I think it's getting I think, like you said, it's going to be very interesting to see kind of the behind the scenes, some of the players' opinions. Maybe there was already a little bit of friction due to previous games in the season, or maybe the last year playoff run. I mean, I think there's going to be lots of stuff to that maybe we'll get more insight to. But I think ultimately them going, that happening is why we have such a watered down. I don't want to say watered down, but like a very non-contact, we're just going after points. We're not, we're sectioning the game up a little bit. I would say that was kind of a turning point where the league said we can't have this be that, and we're going to purposely try to make it, more kid friendly, more points, more whatever the case is. And I think that's kind of, we're going to look back and say that might be a turning point at why we have the game as we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just to also kind of add, if I'm not mistaken, Pistons and Pacers already had a pretty big rivalry. I think earlier that year is when, they had that playoff series in Indiana. Tayshaun had that crazy block on Reggie Miller. So it's like, Pistons got them up out of there in the playoffs the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
Play them early the next season. Pacers get the best of them. Tempers start to flare up. And then, obviously, everybody kind of knows what happens. But, yeah, I mean, it's nuts because, kind of go back to the trailer. I mean, you see people carted off in ambulances. I mean, there's literally stuff in the trailer alone that – this is just where technology was back then compared to now. Like, there is some stuff I've seen for the first time, even in the trailer alone, just guys like people been putting like ambulances, security, like trying to get like Indiana like off the court. Just like, you see a lot of like what other fans were doing like in the stands. Like there's obviously, I think everybody kind of knows about the guy that threw the beer that made our test go into the stands. The guy that got clocked by Jermaine O'Neal actually like on the court.
Yep.
Those are like probably the two biggest things that stick out the most to me as far as just like Pacers and like fans interaction. It literally it went from the Pacers to the Pistons to the fans against the Pacers. Because after a while, I feel like you don't really see a ton of the Pistons around anymore.
Cleared the court, yeah.
Yeah,
and then you'll see. I remember the two images you just said of the beer getting thrown and the guy getting clocked in the middle of the court. Those are two of the biggest images. And I also can remember. I couldn't tell you who it was. Maybe it was Jermaine O'Neal. Maybe one of the players just getting bombarded with popcorn and beer as they're walking through the tunnel, and some coaches trying to cover them and trying to it got pretty nasty. But I am eager to kind of see this documentary and kind of get behind the scenes of it. And I think if there's not a good, I just think this also kind of feeds into the momentum of the Pistons. We have the first round pick. Now this is coming back. That kind of, this is looking like a perfect time for us to kind of get a birth of, revamp. Not that we want people in Cade Cunningham knocking fans out in the stands, but kind of revamp what we had and kind of get that image back and that toughness and aura about us, and get back to the roots a little bit.
Yeah, we got some. Yeah, I would say overall, this ain't gonna be nothing but just kind of like give us like momentum going into the season. You know what I'm saying? And like first overall pick, documentary drops. They play, if I'm not mistaken, they play the Rockets at 9:00 on Tuesday. So you already got like Cade Cunningham versus Jalen Green. For me, I'm excited. It's probably the most excited I was about Pistons basketball in a very long time. So I'm looking forward to the next season for sure.
Agreed. This is the most excited I got since we signed Josh Smith.
Oh man, those are some dark days.
I was hyped then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially seeing him. Then he's like coming off like a little playoff run. They did okay in the playoffs. He was balling out.
They caught him that year. We signed him. Only him and LeBron averaged the same. Like we're only two players with like 25 and 7 or some shit. I was like, oh, good. But
then he came in with shooting 25% from three.
That was on a good day. But no, I agree. I would say so. I'm excited about that. I think that's Tuesday. We're gonna kind of have a recap that we're gonna get out on Wednesday of next week, and just try to give us our 2 cents on whether they made the Pistons look bad or the league look bad or what kind of just overall our opinions of the documentary. And I think we're also going to try to begin to